Hello, hello, hello. Let's just let everyone into the room. How's everyone on this wonderful Wednesday? I'll just let you all get into the room and then we'll get going. I will be starting on time. We're all recording it. So, welcome, welcome. Tell us where you're at in the chat box. Willem, nice to see you again. It's been half an hour. I've had lunch. Okay, my recommendation is let's rock and roll. So, welcome to our next Lunch and Learn. And this one is all about investment terminology. What does it all mean? And I think it's quite important, just to be clear, that we do these Lunch and Learns. And if there's things that you want me to discuss or the team to discuss, then please reach out to one of the team members and or post on one of the social chats, right below, whatever you want to do, so that we can consistently be bringing up information that people want to learn about. So just a very quick one, whirlwind tour. Why am I wearing my Wealth Hacker shirt? This was me with Richard Branson. I learned a long time ago that if you can be the dumbest, poorest person in the room, you can only go up. So I've been spent the last 25 years trying to get around wealthy people so that I can consistently get better, learn, and grow. And that's why we call ourselves Wealth Hackers, so that we can get there simply, safer, and faster by working together. It's not financial advice. It's just me sharing the information that I've learned over the last 25 years of investing. And, I did my first property project, real estate project when I was 13, my first development when I was 22, my first London property when I was 24. I've helped thousands of people invest in South Africa, England, Australia, and America. And in 2014, we finally figured out how to get into commercial property. And we've subsequently done over $100 million in deals, in equity in deals, over $1 billion in deal value in commercial real estate. What are we talking about today? Well, it's all about investment terminology. And so what I'm going to share with you, I'm no financial expert. All that I've got is over 2 decades worth of experience in the space, learning, growing, trying to understand the lingo. And one thing I've learned about the financial industry, I honestly don't know if this is a conspiracy theory or not, but I often wonder if they try and make it so complicated so that people have no idea what you're talking about. And I refer to, things like hurdles and waterfalls and carries. And, I always joke about my brother who's a doctor. And, a hurdle to him is something that you run and jump over. A waterfall is something where waterfall comes off a mountain. And a carry is something that he carries his shopping bags home, And yet all three of those are financial lingo that the industry uses. And by using fancy language, it makes the vast majority, you and me, feel like this, because we don't know what the hell's going on. It makes us feel stupid. And when we feel stupid, we become insecure. And then we need to not, we don't rely on ourselves. So we tend to go to someone else. And then that person earns fees off us. That's my conspiracy theory. I apologize if it's wrong, but that's my kind of take on it. So, things like cash on cash, what actually are they? Or, IRR, investment rate of return, measure, and what's interesting, I'll tell you a little story before I get started here. So I had an interesting experience this year. So I was sitting with my chief investment officer. We were down in Cape Town. I'm not going to mention the company's name. I was with one of the founders of a very successful financial company. They just hired one of the divisional heads. I probably shouldn't say the company's name, but one of the biggest banks in the country. And he used to be the chief, he was basically head of the wealth division. So, I mean, he was their top guy, one of the top 4 banks in the country. He was the head of their wealth division. And we were talking about cash on cash. And what was interesting, at some point, the one gentleman put up his hand and said, sorry, what is cash on cash? And I said, what? You don't, I didn't obviously say this to him. I just was thinking this in my head. I was like, he doesn't understand what cash on cash is. He's the founder of one of the most successful, financial companies in this country. And he's just hired the guy that used to run the private wealth for one of the top 4 banks in the country. So I turned to the guy who's from the bank and I was like, do you know what cash on cash is? And he was like, no. And that's when I realized we had a massive problem, because of 2 people that, according to their position, don't know what the cash on cash is. How the hell would my brother, who's a doctor, my mom, who's a teacher, or probably the majority of you watching this recording actually know what cash on cash is. And again, it's a great story of how the financial lingo actually isolates 99% of us from being able to invest simply, safely, and with peace of mind. So that's why it leaves us all feeling like this. So if this is how you feel when it comes to financial lingo, don't worry, we're all in the same boat in terms of the process. So one thing I want to share with you, if you haven't done it, I will put it in the chat box. I should probably do it now. We hold an investor roadmap workshop. And let me just get the thing up here. It's a 4-hour workshop. I'll put it in the chat box. This is the value of being live, because those of you in the chat box, if you're watching the recording, reach out to one of the team members. This is normally a paid for event, but I put in a free link for those in the chat box. And you can literally, it's this Saturday. So depending on what time zone you're in, it's Saturday morning. We've done a number of them on different times during the week, and we've had a bunch of people ask for us over the weekend. And basically what we do on this journey is we take you on a 9-step process. So we take you through what are the fundamentals of investing, what are the needs of investors, how do you build a wealth plan? You'll walk out of there with a wealth plan. What are the investment categories and opportunities? The setup, how do you do partners and due diligence? How do you manage risk and compliance? Setting up on the investment platform, investing and how the platform works, how the platform works, investing, and then finally earning and all the results. So it's literally an online 4-hour workshop. Thousands of people have done it. Why I'm telling you this is that when we do this, we actually provide the investment terminology. So we provide white papers, which I like to call cheat sheets. So if you've ever been to school or university, most of us would have had friends that we would go and say, hey, you did all the studying, can I get a cheat sheet or something, which made it an easy way to get the information. So these are the cheat sheets that we provide when you do the investor roadmap workshop. Today, I'm going to be focusing on this one, which is investment terminology. So that's the one that we're going to be working on today. There are a bunch of other ones. If you look here, what is commercial real estate and the different asset classes? What is compliance and risk management? How does deal risk categories work? How does due diligence work? What are the partners? How does the real estate value chain work? And your wealth plan certificate. But as I said, for today, we're focusing on the investment terminology. If you've got any questions, fire them into the chat box. That's why we're here live. However, saying that, the intention of this is always to be a TED Talk. So to keep it short, to keep it succinct. So let's go into it. You have the, again, if you come to the investor roadmap, you'll get this cheat sheet, but I just want to run through it with you and I want to put it into English. So what is appreciation? Appreciation is capital growth. If you buy a house for $100 and you sell the house for $110, then your house is appreciated by $10. Are you with me? 10%, $10. Okay, so appreciation is the growth that you get in the property or the real estate over time. So if I buy the house for $100 and I sell it for $200, then my appreciation is $100. It's basically, in simple terms, another word for it is capital growth. So what is the capital growth on my property? Now, one thing that's important to understand with capital growth is that you only get that money on exit. So even though your nest egg is growing, you only get access to that money, generally when you sell the property. Okay, there are ways of doing things like remortgages and readvances, but for the purpose of today, I'm not going to go into that. So the whole thing with capital growth is that you put your money into an asset, and at the end, when you exit the asset, you get the capital growth. This is in alphabetical order, by the way. Cap rates. This one's really interesting. So a lot of people in residential will understand the yield or just the income. So again, if I buy my property for $100 and the income that I'm getting per year is $10, then my yield is 10%. Okay, before taxes and without getting complicated again. But in simple terms, my gross yield is 10%. Now that's the way it works on residential property. On commercial property, the cap rate is determined, it's a financial calculation, which is determined based on the income the property generates. Okay, so there's a bunch of things that go into it, which take into account, how that is calculated. But in simple terms, in simple maths, is that the cap rate is the income that is derived from the property. Now, in commercial property, in commercial real estate, the property is valued based on how much income it's earning, like how much return it's making, okay? And then the cap rate is determined by how much supply and demand there is in the market. So what that basically means is that if cap rates are going up, okay, it actually means the property is getting cheaper. So people want to earn a higher return to make buying that property worthwhile to them. And if cap rates are going down, then property is becoming more expensive because people are prepared to pay more money for a lower return. But in simple terms, it's calculated based on the income that you're generating from the property. So one of the best ways to make money in property is that you buy a commercial property that is only, say, 50% tenanted, and you fill it up and you sign a long-term lease, and then you sell it on to someone else. Because, I mean, you could do that in days, weeks, months, because immediately you can double the value of the property because you've increased the income from 50% to 100%. I could do a whole course just on that, but that's what a cap rate is. Cash flow. I think most of us understand cash flow. That's money that ends up in our pocket. How much money ends up in our pocket? Okay, and you know, we all understand our cash flow. How much money do we have in the bank? The cash on cash return. So this one's an interesting one. This is the return that if I put in $100 in money, so I put $100 in, and I get a 10% cash on cash return, that means that I will earn $10 per year. So that is a net income in my pocket. So if I put in $100 and there's a 10% cash on cash, it means I will get $10 a year. Now, if that's paid monthly or quarterly, the $10 will get divided up. So if it's paid quarterly, I'll get $2.50 every quarter, 4 times a year, it equals $10. The cash on cash is a fantastic way of determining, if I put my money in, how much money am I going to get out net? And we talk a lot about passive income, and we talk a lot about financial freedom. Cash on cash is the way that you get financial freedom, because if an asset, or better still, multiple assets are paying you a passive income, like the cash on cash, which is the passive income, then that's how you create your freedom. Commercial real estate, I think that's self-explanatory. I did do a lunch and learn on the difference between residential and commercial property, so I'm not going to repeat it all. But in simple terms, residential is traditionally what we live in. It's our houses and apartments, and commercial property is where there's, you know, businesses taking place. I'm going to keep it for today's purposes as simple as that. Debt to income ratio. So what this is if a property is earning a certain amount of income, how much is the mortgage going to cost you? So if you get a mortgage from a bank, whether it's residential or commercial, there's a mortgage payment you need to make every month. Okay, and they calculate it and they say, well, if the income is $200, okay, and the debt or the cost, the interest payment you need to make, every year is $100, then your debt to income ratio is 200%, because effectively the debt, the cost of the debt is $100 and your income is $200. So you've got 2 times cover on your debt to income. It's a very important number to look at when you're looking at commercial real estate, because it shows you how much safety you've got, that if interest rates rise, or even if some of the tenants don't pay, how much cover have you got to be able to pay off the debt. The equity. So in a property, most properties, residential or commercial, people will put down a certain deposit to, cash, and they'll borrow the rest from the bank. Now that could be, it's called loan to value, and they could, borrow anywhere from, 30, 40, 50, 60, even 70, 80, sometimes in residential, even up to 90, even 100%. So the equity is the cash that you put into the deal. So it's your hard-earned cash that goes into the deal, and that's the equity component. It's the cash component of the transaction. The internal rate of return. So this is a good one. I learned this off Dr. Hannes Dreyer back in 2002. Now, the internal rate of return has 27 financial variables. So I'm not going to sit here and confuse the living hell out of you as to what the internal rate of return is. But what's really important is that the internal rate of return is the best way to compare an apple with an orange and an egg. Okay, and I'm using three things on purpose, because if you want to compare the stock market to property, to gold, to crypto, it's very, very hard to compare them. But because there's 27 variables under the internal rate of return, it allows you to compare different asset classes and different investments and give you the same number so you can compare it. And in simple terms, what does it do? It takes the entire value of the investment, both the income and the capital growth. It applies the 27 variables I've spoken of, but it brings the time value of money back to today. So it doesn't say you're going to make money in 5 years. It says how much money are you making per year from this year? And it takes into account, as I said to you already, 27 different variables. Quite frankly, I don't know how my car drives. Okay, I don't care. It helps me go from A to B. I would highly recommend with internal rate of return, you can go and spend 6 years trying to understand how the calculation works. That's not your job. As long as you can trust the people that are doing the IRR and believe that the IRR, internal rate of return, is accurate, the internal rate of return is the best financial metric that takes into account income and capital growth, and it gives you an annual return that you can compare an apple with an orange. Mezzanine debt. So often when you're buying a commercial property, there will be short-term debt. So mezzanine debt is generally short-term debt. Long-term debt comes from a bank. Mezzanine debt is short-term debt, and often it's when someone buying a property doesn't have enough money. They've got some of the deposit, but they don't have enough of the deposit, so they take out what's called mezz debt or mezzanine debt, and it generally comes from private capital. So it comes from private individuals or private companies, and it's more risky and therefore costs more money than bank debt. The net operating income. So this is an interesting one. I even had to read this today. So just to give you peace of mind that we don't all know everything, because the net operating income is what's used to calculate what is the income minus the expenses. So running any property has expenses, you know, the management and the body corporate or the HOA and, you know, the maintenance, the repairs, you know, etc., property taxes. So the net operating income takes the gross income and it deducts off the expenses, but not the mortgage. Okay, so it's all the operating expenses, but not the mortgage. And it gives you the net operating income. And so it's just another metric to know how much the property is making minus expenses, but before paying the interest on the mortgage. And it is interesting, if you read this, it's one of the variables that's used in determining the cap rate in commercial property. And then lastly, return on investment. This really is probably one of the most simple metrics. If I buy the same house I just told you for $100 and I sell it in a couple of years for $160, then the return on investment is simple maths. It's 160 divided by 100, which is effectively 60%. So you would say that the return on investment is 60%. It's not a very accurate measure because often it doesn't take into account if there was any income or expenses during the couple of years you owned the property. It doesn't take into account time value of money. So 60% sounds really good, but it doesn't divide it per year. So you don't get an accurate indication of per year. It's quite hard to compare an apple with an orange. So if you've got one deal that you're investing for 1 year and you've got another deal that you're investing for 5 years, you know, ROI, return on investment, is very hard to calculate it because this one's a 1-year deal and this one's a 5-year deal. And so you're comparing different time value of money, etc. And again, return on investment is the one that most of us have been taught or even that we understand, but it's one of the most simple metrics. And although it's valuable to know, it's useful to know, it's not one of the best ways of determining whether this investment's better than this investment, because the IRR, internal rate of return, takes into account all 27 variables and it allows you to compare an apple with an orange. So let me know in the chat box if there are any other formulas that you don't know the details to, but those are the most important ones. And like I said to you, if you want to come on the investor roadmap, we will provide you with those cheat sheets We will take you within a 4-hour journey on why, all the fundamentals of investing, the what, the setup, and then the how. We'll teach you how to do it. We've got a number of masterclasses that I think would be very valuable for you. This masterclass is the 4 important lessons learned from wealthiest investors, from investing in uncertain times and what you can do right now, whether you're highly sophisticated or a beginner. So we've got 2 webinars coming up, one in early November and one in early December. If you want to come along to that, again, having done this for over 20 years, it's learning from the wealthiest people that I've helped invest. We've got diversification. I know this one's resonating a huge amount with individuals at the moment, with where the world is. One of the best hedges against the stock market and against inflation is alternative assets. And so, you really need to be able to diversify across countries, currencies, assets, and partners, and even time. So there's the 5 components of diversification, and I will take you through it on this masterclass of the key things you need to know. The investor roadmap I've already referred to, but this is our workshop. It happens once a month, and the next one happens to be this Saturday, if you're interested to come along. And the last thing that I would say is the next steps. And sorry, I don't know why I don't have the link there to the 4 investment lessons, but just contact the team or make a comment below. But you've got the links to all the other ones, and then you can come along and be part of the masterclasses. And that, as they say, is my TED Talk, literally on about 18 minutes. Oh, Capital Stack. Did I not do Capital Stack? Sorry, I must have missed that, Rob. Capital Stack. So what the Capital Stack is if you're investing in a deal and 60% is coming from the bank, and 20% is coming from mezzanine debt, and 20% is coming from equity. That's called the capital stack. So if you take a stack, the mortgage is the 60%, then you've got the mezz debt, which is the 20%, and then you've got the equity, which is the 20%. Now, just from a risk perspective, I'm just going to look at the camera so you can see it. So from a risk perspective, the bank takes the least risk because they lend the money against the property. If you default on the mortgage, they will take the property. The next in the capital stack is the mezz debt. So they tend to sign they get a second surety against the property. They often take personal liability against the person buying the property or the company buying the property. And so if you were to default, the bank will get first right to the property and they will get second right to the property. Generally, it's only an income return though. So the mezzanine debt is an income return. And then finally, in the capital stack is equity. And the equity arguably takes the most risk, but they also get the benefit of not only the income, but also the capital growth. So they in the capital stack, the equity is higher risk and effectively higher return. Now, how do you manage that risk? Well, you make sure you're investing with quality partners, of institutional caliber. You make sure they're putting their money into the deal on the same terms as you, so that your money and their money is being treated equally. You make sure that there's due diligence done on the partners. You make sure that the partners have a huge amount of track record, that they have the ability to do due diligence on the deal. You make sure that the bank is involved, because then they would have done due diligence. And so there's a whole bunch of things you can do, which aren't for today, which we teach in the Investor Roadmap workshop, around what you can do to mitigate risk. But in simple terms, in the capital stack, it's the different types of capital that are involved in a deal, the different risks that are taken into account, and also the different income. Hope that helps, Rob. Any others? Anything else I haven't answered? I know there's 100 million financial lingo things out there. I focused on the ones that are in our cheat sheet and that are primarily used in the alternative asset space. And if anyone's got any questions, the whole purpose of a lunch and learn is I'm here. So is there anything else I can help with? Anything else that anyone else would like to know? I would highly recommend that, engage with us, let us know. Each lunch and learn, we try and attend and provide a, new lesson. If you're part of the Wealth Hackers, they're all being, put into the Wealth University. They're also being built out where you've got the aspirational investor, the person starting out, getting going. You've got the kind of, the more, intermediate investor that kind of been doing it for a while. And then you've got the advanced investor. And, we built it all out so the different lessons are related to what stage you're at. If you're not part of the Wealth Hackers and you want to do it on your own, then no problem for you. You just need to find it on the social channels, social media, YouTube, etc. It will leave me with my final comment. That's that there are three types of people in the world. There's those that want to do it on their own. I mean, for those of you, perfect. You're on the Lunch and Learn for free. You can go on our platform for free and you can start investing from $10. If you want to follow the laws of nature, statistically, and according to the laws of nature, if you work in a group, you'll be 70% more successful if you're in a like-minded community. And so we created the Wealth Hackers so that people can get there together 70% faster, simpler, and safer. But those are people that like to work together. And then finally, you've got those people that want it done for them. And that's what we call our diversification mastermind. And interestingly enough, statistically, you'll be 5 times better off. So to put that in statistics, if you consider this is naught over here, in the middle, you're going to be 70% better off in getting your financial results. And over here on the mastermind, you're going to be 500% better off. So yeah, we've got different solutions for all three types of people, whether you want to do it on your own, whether you want to do it together, or you want it done for you. Let us know. And if you're interested in any one of the three, reach out to the team and we can assist. Okay, let's look here quickly. I think I have answered all the questions. So I don't think there's anything else to talk about other than I look forward to seeing you on the Investor Roadmap coming up this weekend if you're watching live or the recording. If you're watching this in the future, no problem. Just go to the link below and make sure that you click on the different links. These are the different masterclasses that we run regularly between the 4 important lessons, diversification, the Investor Roadmap. If you want to get started and buy a starter pack, you can literally go ahead and get started. It's the fastest way to get going. And or you can go to the platform and just sign up and do it on your own. Ladies and gentlemen, that's our Lunch and Learn for this week. We will see you next week. Keep letting me know and the team know about the topics you want. And we look forward to continually educating you, building your belief, and most importantly, helping you get on your journey so that you can live a life unlimited. That's what we're passionate about, is helping you live a life unlimited. How do we do it? Through smart investing, and it starts with knowledge. Till next week. Cheers.